All right, I think we can get started. So thank you all for coming in today to learn about our work in New York. My name is Max Ghenis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PolicyEngine. I'm here with my colleague David Trimmer, who's been doing a huge amount of research on three of the most important, I think, tax credit proposals happening in New York: the Working Families Tax Credit, the New York City Child Tax Credit, and also tax proposals from Governor Hochul. Some background, PolicyEngine, we are a nonprofit that provides a free open source software platform for simulating the effect of public policy. So I'll kick it off by just describing a little bit more what that means and talking about microsimulation, which is a technique that we adopt for doing our research. Then I'll also talk through a very brief sort of simple household example so you can understand how households are currently affected by the existing tax and benefit system in New York. And then I'll turn it over to David to go through his research on these critical proposals. So we have released two separate research reports, and we're going to release a third shortly, along with a new web app that we'll be previewing for you, comparing how these policies affect a customizable household. And then finally, I'll wrap up just by describing some of our future plans as well to make public policy more accessible for New Yorkers. Okay, so PolicyEngine, as I mentioned, we're a nonprofit that provides open source software for simulating the effect of public policy. And really, that's all in furtherance of our mission to compute the impact of public policy for everyone. So by making it open source, by having both federal and local, we operate in the UK as well. We're trying to operate in as many contexts, as many policies as we can, and also tailor the content and the messaging to as many different stakeholders as possible, including the public. So you'll see some of our work to make policy more accessible through AI as well through this demo. And in terms of what our platform provides, so a few things: you can go into our tool and enter information about your household, and we then calculate the taxes you owe, tax credits you might be eligible for, and benefits you might be eligible for with dollar values. And we provide extra analytics as well, which you'll see. We serve an API, so this kind of information at the individual household level helps people understand what benefits they are eligible for through third-party apps. So we currently partner with 3 organizations: My Friend Ben, Benefit Navigator, and Impactica, to help people access benefits with software that they don't have to write all the rules. They sort of delegate all of that work to our team of experts who encode all those tax and benefit rules. And finally, the part you'll see the most of today is our ability to simulate custom policy reforms, both on an individual household and on society at large. And this could be the US, New York City. We're hopeful we can also get even more local impacts of those as well. And that all happens through our open source rules engine, which powers each of these experiences in conjunction with, for example, the enhanced microdata, which we use for our simulations. Cool. So just a quick primer on microsimulation, which is the technique that we adopt. Microsimulation really has 3 different ingredients. So one is we encode tax and benefit rules. So we read those statutes, read the regulations, read the tax forms and benefit program documents, and turn those into code, Python code in our case. The second piece is we construct representative data. So we can simulate not just one household, but lots of households. And the third, which we won't show in this webinar, but we'll talk about in future ones, is about how people respond in terms of behavior. So you put all those together and you can simulate a very rich set of policy reforms and also have very rich understanding of how it varies. So here's one example. Let's say we have some very simple tax system where, for example, someone who earns $100,000 pays $30,000 in taxes. and doesn't receive any benefits. So they're left with 70,000. The next step would be making sure that that system for calculating that is flexible. So you can calculate not just under current law, but also under a custom policy reform. So in this case, maybe the reform cut their taxes by $5,000. Didn't affect their benefits. Now, the key is doing that not just for one household, but lots of households. So in this case, you might have diverse ways in which the policy reform affects people. So if you have two kids, maybe it actually increases your taxes, this hypothetical reform. And if you have low income and one child, you're not affected at all. The last step is then we assign weights. So for every household in our data, we say this household represents this number of real households in the country. That enables us to finally calculate the aggregate effect of some policy reform. In this case, we're sort of doing the multiplication and the addition, and we can figure out that this reform is going to cost $1.1 billion. So let's see it in a little bit more real scenario. So we're going to look at a single parent in New York City with two kids, age 3 and 6, earning $33,000. And we'll now be able to see through our rules engine what their taxes and benefits are, and also sort of the shape of some of these policies, how they might change depending on their earnings. So you go to PolicyEngine.org, and there are two ways to use the app. You can either start with a household view, which we'll do today, and then we'll come back to the policy reform side. So the user, we can start with just 6 questions to get them started. We can add more detail from there. But basically, we're going to ask for their tax year. Let's say we're doing 2025, or are we doing 2026 actually for?
We can do 2025.
Okay, great. So single parent. So single here, 2 kids, New York. And we will say they have 33,000 in earnings. And finally, age 3 and 6. Now there's going to be, that's enough for us to estimate your taxes and benefits. There's one last piece, which we haven't specified there in New York City. We intend to make this a little easier where you'll just put in your zip code and we'll figure everything out from there. For now, you have to sort of search for this New York City toggle and flip that on. And now if you go back to household details, it'll recalculate everything, including New York City tax programs and benefit details. So this usually takes about 10, 15 seconds. In the meantime, you can sort of see in this middle panel what we'll be able to do. So we'll see sort of their current state, which is how much they take home after taxes, tax credits, and benefits. And then we're going to get increasingly analytical. So there are external tools like My Friend Ben that are just for household use cases. We hope if you're interested in the details of policy, you can get even more benefit from our tool through looking at these charts, marginal tax rates, and even you can replicate the results in Python. Okay, so this is done calculating now. We can see that this household earning $33,000 after taxes and benefits actually takes home about $44,000. And that's because if you look at their benefits, they're getting about $4,000. Refundable tax credits, so benefits include SNAP, WIC, and school meals. Refundable credits, they're going to get federal, state, and local. So the federal, they're going to get EITC and CTC. These are just the refundable pieces. And they get New York and New York City EITC and CTC. So we can actually drill in to any of these programs and see even some of the inner workings of why that number is what it is with this new feature we just launched in December. So click that info tooltip and explain with AI. And this now takes all those intermediate calculations we're using to figure out what that number is. And it puts it into a large language model prompt to explain in plain language, here is explanation of why you're receiving what you are. So really excited to hopefully make these very complex policies more accessible through this AI tool, which we're also launching to our API customers later this quarter. By the way, of course, if anyone has questions along the way, feel free to unmute, raise your hand, drop it in the chat, anything you'd like. And with that, I will, turn it over to David to talk about some of the specific bills.
Thanks, Max. So we're going to start with Senate Bill S2238, which is also the New York City Child Tax Credit proposal sponsored by Senator Andrew Ghenis. So a little background on this proposal. So this proposal, currently, New York City residents can claim the school tax credit, which is divided into two portions. It provides a fixed amount of $63 or $125 if you're filing jointly, and also provides a rate reduction amount that phases in with taxable income. What this proposal would do would phase out the school tax credit beginning at 5%, beginning at $75,000 or $150,000 for joint filers, and create a $300 fully refundable child tax credit for kids 17 and under. The child tax credit would also phase out at the same parameters, 5% beginning at $75,000 or $150,000 for joint filers. So let's go to PolicyEngine and let's compute the impact of this. So instead of computing my taxes and benefits, we're going to compute a policy reform. So this takes us to our model. Currently, this is where all of our parameters are currently housed and separated based off if they deal with tax, then we're going to go to the Internal Revenue Service. If it deals with health, we're going to go to the Health and Human Services. But we also have parameters for states and our contributed reforms, which are proposals that are not yet current law. Just to give you an example, we can go to the IRS. Let's go to credits and the child tax credit. And we can look at the current amount for the credit. And we can see that over time, we're modeling the amount for this credit. So in 2013, it was $1,000. Then in 2018, it was raised to $2,000 via the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And then that credit is going to come back down to $1,000 in 2026 when TCJA is expected to expire. So all of our parameters, we model based off their values in time. Anything adjusted for inflation, we apply inflation adjustments. So for this proposal, I could go and input every single parameter needed. However, that would take too long. So all I'm going to do is use this function over here and type in the reform, Senate Bill S2238. I'm going to click it and hit the check mark. And that is going to populate all of the parameters in this reform that we've saved previously. And below here, you can see the provisions where we have all of the parameters changed. So we have an in effect parameter. We just click this and then it includes most of the parameters that we need. We can also simulate, we've used basic income to simulate our basic income parameters to simulate the child tax credit phasing out at 5%. It's going to phase out $150,000 for joint filers. And we also include the $300 amount for kids. Under more options, we're going to make sure that we're simulating in the correct place. So instead of the US, we're going to go to New York City, and we're going to do this for tax year 2025. And then we can calculate and we can get results. Now, usually this takes a minute or two, but we have this ready to go so that results popped up right away. So we can see that in New York City, this bill is projected to raise $92.7 million. It's going to lower poverty by 1%, and we use the supplemental poverty measure, increase income for 32% of people, and reduce it for 24.6% of people. Now, we're going to go through more in depth these citywide and statewide impacts when we cover some of the other proposals. But now let's examine how this proposal would affect that household that Max went over. So instead of just going through our normal household calculator, we can actually enter my household with the reform. So we're just going to recreate the household in 2025, single parent of 2, living in New York, their income $33,000, ages of the child 3 and 6, and then we also want to make sure they are in NYC. Gonna click that, submit, make sure everything's lined up, and we're gonna compute, and it's gonna take a minute or two, but we'll be able to see the change in net income for this household rather than what their income is going to be overall. We're going to compare to the baseline that we just went over for 2025 and see how this bill changes their net income. So we can also see that if their income varies, how will their benefits change, or how did this reform affect their marginal tax rates? You can see our post on this, our analysis of this on our site to get some more details. But right now, once this loads, we're just going to check out the net income as this loads. Yeah, and if there's any questions while I go over any of this, feel free to put them in the chat or let me know. More than happy to answer any questions. Probably just needs a few seconds longer. There we go. Perfect. So we can see that this proposal in Senate Bill S2238 is going to increase this household's net income by $600. And we're going to see that their benefits rise by $600. This basic income represents the child tax credit. So they're getting $300 per each kid. And because they're under the phase out thresholds for the school tax credit, that benefit doesn't change. So they just get a full $600 more in net income. So let's also move on to the New York Working Families Tax Credit. So let me give you a little bit of background on this because this one's a little bit more complicated. So this proposal would replace the Empire State Child Credit and provide a fully refundable credit for children with that value of the credit increasing over 5 years. At the same time, the New York Earned Income Tax Credit would shrink over 5 years, phasing down from 30% to 0%. And the dependent exemption will be limited to dependents not qualifying for the Working Families Tax Credit. So the Working Families Tax Credit would go to children 16 or under for the first 3 years, and then be expanded to 17-year-olds in year 4. So dependents that are 17 during those first 3 years would get the dependent exemption. In year 4, they would no longer get it. The Working Families Tax Credit would phase out at 2% at certain thresholds that decrease as the reform is implemented. And I'm going to give you specifics here on the next slide. And in 2026, no family would receive a benefit lower than $100, essentially creating a $100 minimum benefit per child that's eligible. So here is a table of the different moving parts of this bill. So we can see the Empire State Child credit in 2024, that's current law, but in 2025, it's eliminated. And then the EITC match for eligible dependents. So any dependents that aren't eligible for the Working Families Tax Credit, but would still be eligible for the EITC, they stay at 30%, but everyone else, it slowly decreases to 0. Dependent exemption, just went over that. First 2 years, the dependent exemption stays the way it is. And then in 2026, those ineligible for the Working Families Tax Credit continue to get a dependent exemption. The others do not. Working Families Tax Credit age for 16-year-olds, then it goes to 17-year-olds in 2028. And then we can see that the maximum benefit of the Working Families Tax Credit increases, and it's also tied to inflation. So this is why some of the numbers aren't round, and reaches $1,822 when it's fully implemented in 2029. The minimum benefit goes into effect in 2026. And we can see on the right here that the thresholds where the credit begins to phase out slowly diminish down. Yeah, so let's look at some impacts for the Working Families Tax Credit. We're going to do the same exact thing that we did for the New York City Child Tax Credit. We're going to go here and we're going to type in New York Working Families. Oh, whoops. New York Working Families Tax Credit. And we're going to click the check mark and make sure we're in New York. We want to look at the entire state. and we can do that for 2025. So we're going to calculate, and we get our impacts. So we can see in 2025, it's going to cost roughly $660 million, going to lower poverty statewide by 1.4% and raise the net income for 30.7% of people. So let's look closer into some of these statewide impacts. We can go to the budgetary impact, and we can see, since this is just a state proposal, we're not seeing any federal tax revenues. There's no interactions between federal tax in this proposal either. It's just all state and income tax revenues that are being decreased in this proposal. We can look at the income deciles. So this shows the percent gain of a household in each decile. So we can see that the first decile is receiving the most as a percentage of their net income, and then this is slowly trending downwards. But if we look at the average benefit, the dollar amount, we can see the income deciles are benefiting differently. The middle deciles are typically benefiting the most, and because the benefits are phasing out as you get higher up the income distribution, the average benefit reduces. We can also look at what we call our winners and losers chart. So we can see the percent of the percent of residents in each decile, if they're gaining, if they're losing share of their net income, and by a lot or a little. The dark blue, I should say, is they're gaining more than 5% of their net income. If it's light blue, it's less than 5%. Now, in this proposal, no one's losing out. Otherwise, we would see on this side here some gray of people either losing more than 5% of their net income or less than 5% of their net income. We can also look at impact on poverty. So we can see that in 2025, child poverty is going to drop by 4.4%, but overall it's going to be 1.4%. And we can also look by race, gender. We can also check out deep poverty. Currently not getting any deep poverty impacts for 2025. And then we can look at inequality. So we measure inequality in 3 different ways: the Gini index of income inequality, and then the share of income held by households in the top 10% and the top 1%. And we can see that inequality is decreasing in this proposal. Another cool feature that we have is our AI summary. So what we can do here is we can generate some information on the proposal that we have in the web app right now. So we have explain like I'm 5, normal, or our wonk mode. So we can generate an analysis, and it will display some background on this reform as well as the impacts of this proposal. Oh, that's okay. We'll have to take a look at that. But yeah, usually it provides some background on the information on the reform that's inputted and some the impacts that I just went over. Great. So went over the working families tax credit. Last one is Governor Hochul's tax provisions. So while Governor Hochul released a lot of proposals in her budget, we focus on 3. The first one is her inflation rebates, a proposal to provide a $300 credit to single filers under $150,000 and $500 to joint filers under $300,000 of state AGI. Second is her Empire State Child Credit expansion. This removes the income requirement. So currently, if you make very little income in New York, you get a $100 minimum for the Empire State Child Credit, though the maximum is $330. So you have to earn a certain amount in order to get that credit. This proposal eliminates that requirement. Also increases the maximum credit to $1,000 for children under 4 in 2025. And then the credit rises from $330 to $500 for children 4 through 16 in 2026. Final proposal is to lower the first 5 tax bracket rates by 0.2% over 2 years. So in 2025, they would increase by 0.1%, and then 2026, they would increase by another 0.1%. So not going to take you through the specific impacts on the web app, but we have done so, and we have the impacts currently here in this table. So we can see that in 2025, inflation rebates going to cost about 3.7 billion, and we also assume full take up. So anybody under the income limits is eligible for the credit. That might not necessarily be the reality of this proposal, but we can adjust later on to reflect that. The Empire State Child Credit expansion going to cost $480 million, income tax cuts 623, all going to benefit people, the different amount of people. 94% for inflation rebates, 15%, 68%. Reduce poverty by various amounts, deep poverty as well. And while the inflation rebates and the Empire State Child Credit will decrease inequality, the Gini index, we say that the income tax cuts are actually going to increase. And then 2026, we're only looking at the Empire State Child Credit expansion and the income tax cuts, since the inflation rebates are a one-time program. We can see that because of that, the cost in 2025 is higher than it is in 2026, even as the Empire State Credit and the income tax cuts, they increase their budgetary impact from the previous year. They also increase the amount of people that they are providing net benefits to, and the poverty impacts change as a result of the programs changing and the inflation rebates expiring. So we're planning to release further impacts on Hochul's proposals in an upcoming report that we will be happy to share with you. But one proposal that we're currently looking at right now from Hochul that we want to dive into a little bit more is her Empire State Child Credit expansion, because it's very similar, or it's a proposal that can be very easily compared to the Working Families Tax Credit. And we've actually created a web app here to compare. So I'm going to click this link right here. And right now we have created a Streamlit app where you can input your household information. So you can input how much income did you receive, how many children do you have, and then if we increase the number of children here, it'll ask for their ages, so we can distinguish their credit amounts based on Hochul's proposal, since it differs if you have a child under 4 or if they're 4 through 16, as well as are you married, so we can account for the different phase out thresholds. So we can input some of the information. So let's look at this household. So we can look at the single parent from New York City, $33,000, 2 children of 3 and 6, and we can calculate. Now I have, I'm sorry, I have the these ready to go. 1 second. I don't want my. One sec, sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. So we have the information here that I just inputted, but so we don't have to wait, we can look at it right now. So we have the example of the household we were looking at previously, $33,000 of income, 2 kids at 3 and 6. And we can see the net income change based off both of these proposals. So in the teal, we have Hochul's Empire State Child Credit proposal for 2025 and 2026. And then we have the Working Families Tax Credit in 2025, 2026, and when it's fully phased in 2029. And we can compare for this household, the Hochul's proposal versus the Working Families Tax Credit, their change in net income. So the Empire State Child Credit only affects that credit, while the working families tax credit obviously affects, it provides a credit per child while also shrinking the EITC and also shrinking or limiting the dependent exemption. So these changes are reflected here in the net income. So we can see in 2025 for this household, Hochul's proposal is going to provide 670, while the working families tax credit is going to provide $184. In 2026, Hochul's proposal is going to provide a little bit more, but once the working families tax credit is fully phased in, it provides more benefits to this household. And I have another one second. I have another household example I wanted to show. Okay, so this household is a married couple making $60,000, and they have 3 kids. One child's 3 years old, so they're considered a younger child, and then 2 older children at 7 and 10. And we can look at the net income change again, and we can see that in 2025, Hochul's proposal provides roughly $100 more than the working families tax credit, but in 2026, the working families tax credit will provide roughly $185 more than the working families tax credit for this household. And then once the working families tax credit is fully phased in, it provides $3,338, much more than Hochul's proposal in 2026. So we're looking to fine tune this, provide some more details on this app, and then we will be happy to share this and post this on our site. But yeah, that's it for me. I hope that you found that informative, and I will pass that back to Max.
Great. I'll just quickly wrap up before we go to questions with some preview of what we're building now that we hope will make policymaking in New York more evidence-based and maybe even delightful. So a few things we're building on the comprehensiveness side. We're trying to encompass more policy rules, so encode more, make the results even more accurate using the state-of-the-art economics research, and also improve the accessibility of the product. So on the rules side, making it more comprehensive. So we're almost done with Affordable Care Act, Obamacare subsidies nationwide. Actually, New York has one of the most weird, complex rules of any state. So it's only New York and Vermont that are waiting to be done. But we'll have that in the next month. And we're also adding more childcare subsidies. We're adding just a bunch more benefit programs to the model as we can. We've also fully updated state income taxes in New York for the 2024 tax year, and we've inflation adjusted all the things that should be growing. So into the future, you can be confident that your results will capture what the law is likely to represent. One of the bigger things we are hopeful we can get to this year is add more accurate state and especially congressional district or even legislative district breakdowns, state legislative district breakdowns. And this is a project we've embarked on in the UK that we will launch in the next month. So we will keep you posted in future updates in terms of whether we get that in the US. On the accuracy side, so we currently have, yes, Pete, thank you for all the difficulties in New York. We didn't show it in this model, so everything we have displayed so far, we assume there's no behavioral responses, so people don't change their labor supply depending on their marginal tax rate or how much income they have. We do have capabilities to model those labor supply responses, but there's kind of a lot more we could do. And also we're looking at general equilibrium models. So you could imagine, for example, a childcare subsidy might make it more attractive to join the labor force. We don't currently capture the price of childcare due to subsidies in the model. And finally, we are actually working with a UX research agency, design agency on doing a full study and redesign from the ground up. So we think it looks pretty good right now, but we've all also seen some opportunities to make it even more useful to you and the policy community. So that will come later this year. Also just working on additional ways to integrate AI, make the API more accessible, have the software just be more useful to researchers and people across the spectrum of political knowledge. So with that, I think we'll stop presenting and open it up for any questions from the audience. Thank you for indulging in this presentation from us. In the meantime, I'll also drop the link to the slides in the chat. So if you want to take more of a look at what we shared, you can do that.
I have a bunch of questions. If I can, okay.
Yeah.
David, I don't know, I kind of had questions for like as they arose for slides that we've moved off of, but you had the series of bar graphs comparing the WFTC versus the governor's ESCC proposal. I don't know if it's possible to go back to that.
Yeah, let me share screen again. Actually, one sec. Get off this. We'll go to that one. Now we'll share. Yeah.
So I guess like one of the big can you go down to the bar graphs? One of the major differences that I think we want to highlight in terms of gaps between these two is that hers is only 3 years. And I actually just found out right before the call that she like may not extend it at all. And so I guess my question for you all as you're releasing this tool is that in 2029, it appears that this family gets nothing because it would just revert back to the current ESCC levels. So could we add a graph that says Hochul's 2029 0, which would be factually accurate?
Yeah, we could add this. This was something I just wanted to put together just to get a rough idea. But we're definitely looking to fine tune this.
Yeah, so we'll have a series for each year, and it'll be a lot more apparent sort of in each year, not just, and we won't skip 27 and 8 either. It'll be sort of complete in that regard.
Oh, right, because you didn't do each. You did 2025, 26. Yeah, that's fine. This is just a fabulous graph. It's one of the questions that the legislature is grappling with very deeply, is we're actually pretty concerned about this like cliff impact when 2027 rolls around and this credit expires and she may not extend it, assuming that we do her credit expansion in this way. So that would be super useful for us. And then I also had a question about, you kind of laid out the income inequality and the poverty reduction impacts. You had that on a different slide of all the governor's 3 proposals.
Yeah, let me go over here. Yeah.
So I want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. The income tax cuts increase income inequality. Is that what this is saying, by 0.2%?
Yes, that's I use the Gini index of inequality for this row, and yes.
Okay, I'm guessing that is, from what I've heard from Pete and other folks, it seems like the bulk of these are actually going to higher income filers. The way that this rate reduction is designed, is that correct?
Let's open this. It should be loaded, and then we can look at the income distribution. And then this is our income distribution for net income in a household. So this is the average benefit that a household in each decile would benefit from just the income tax cuts in 2026.
And David, do you know, like in that 10th decile, which is the wealthiest households, like what the parameter, like what the range of incomes are included there would be?
I do not. I also should specify that we are using the decile like ranges nationally. This is not New York specific.
Okay.
We control those boundaries, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the basic structure of the credit is the individual who gets the maximum like benefit from the tax cut is the household making $323,000 or whatever. That's you've gotten some value from each marginal rate up to that point. And so that would make sense, just the nature of how marginal tax rates work, right?
Mhm.
And in terms of, it's a little in the weeds, but the way we draw the boundaries are, it's sort of normalized for household size. So it's not just a specific, $10,000 to $20,000 AGI or something like that. So happy to pull slices by specific boundaries if that's more useful. You said you had a bunch, Becky. It was only 2.
I did. Well, so I missed the beginning of the call, and I don't know if you guys went over this, but and this is probably my fault, but I'm just having trouble navigating PolicyEngine. Like if you were to pull up the New York City CTC reform, for example, if I wanted to tweak the phase out threshold, etc., I was getting lost. I didn't know what to click. So I'm not sure if you guys did a basic tutorial in the beginning, or if that is beyond the scope of this webinar. That's fine, and I could do that separately. But
yeah. So I just put up the reform.
yeah,
Well, maybe
And
pull it up just from the homepage, David, so we can
yeah, right.
oh, okay.
And yeah, we actually didn't cover. It's a great point, Becky. PolicyEngine doesn't just let you pull up saved reforms. You can change any of the parameters that a reform changes, or a whole bunch of others. So yeah, let's definitely get into that.
Yeah, so to change, let's see. So this would be a contributed reform. So we would go here, and then
Okay.
and then this is a local reform, so NYC, and then the school tax credit, and then we have our phase out parameter here, and we can set it into effect, and then we can adjust the rate as well. And this is
We
all
could
out of
maybe
order.
pull up the reform though, and then tweak it from there.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, that was my other. It seems like
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's the other part I couldn't figure out.
Okay, then let's just, what do I call it? Senate bill. Yeah, okay,
Yeah, perfect.
great. And then is this that's the basic income? One sec. Some of these are out of order. You know what? Actually, it didn't change them because they are already set. So let me find it very quickly if I can.
Sorry,
Back to look.
do you remind us what we're looking for here?
I was wondering, like, I think because this tool could be most useful to folks like me, if I got the PolicyEngine, read out the impacts analysis, but then I could go in and like change certain parameters of the bill. So for the phase out threshold, if we currently have it at
Here we
what, it's
go.
like 75. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
There we go. Found it. Yes. So if you go to our contributed section, which has all of our reforms that are not current law, and then you go to
Okay.
local, New York
Local.
City, school tax credit, and then we go to the rate. So we have this set up in 2 different brackets. So in bracket 1, there's no phase out, but once you hit the $75,000 threshold, the rate is 5%. So you can adjust the rate 5% if you want to change it to 2.5 or 2 or whatever.
Mhm.
And then you can change the threshold to 75,000 to whatever you would like to change it to.
What you were saying over email is, and this makes a little bit more sense to me now. If I wanted to do 2 different phase out thresholds for like different types of filing statuses, we can't currently do that. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
Because now I see why, like, you don't have a split.
We have
That
it
seems like too
split
complicated.
for
Yeah.
joint and surviving spouses, and then everyone else.
All right,
That's a
so
split.
just to play it out, so let's say we want to change the phase out rate from 5% to 4%, just to see sort of what that does.
Yeah.
So you do what? You go.
So I click here, and then oh, whoops,
Yeah,
and then I hit enter, and now it changes that to 4%. And you can change what year you want that to start to. We also have it. You can click this, and we can go to yearly, or go to date, or just if you want to change the rate based off of any
Yeah.
year, and you can do that, but that's more complicated. This usually gets the job done.
So then if I want to see like, okay, now we've changed that phase out rate, what does that cost? What's that
Right.
do to the sort of the distributions, the, you know, all that stuff? Like, how do I go from
Do you
there?
want to compare to current law, or do you want to compare to the actual bill's text right
Bill.
now? Okay,
Bill.
The bill,
so
yeah.
here's what we would do. So let's, for simplicity, let's both change it to 4%, since that would just, for simplicity. We're gonna go to more options, and we have our baseline policy. So instead of doing current law, I'm gonna type in Senate Bill S2238. I'm gonna hit check. So now our baseline policy is the original bill text, but this has the rates at 4%. So we can calculate, let me make sure I'm in New York City. Yep. And then we can calculate economic impact. So this will simulate, this might take 30 seconds to a minute, but then it will compare just the changes we made based to the original bill.
And if you are curious what that funky icon is right next to the check, if you want to flip the baseline and reform,
Oh, yeah.
you can do that too. So sometimes, for example, if folks are interested in what is the impact of a policy that already exists, like the ESCC, for example, you could create a reform where you get rid of the ESCC and make that the baseline, and then you're looking at current law compared to that other baseline. That's basically the effect of that policy.
Okay, so we can see that reducing the phase-out rate to 4% is going to cost an additional $3.3 million, and it raises the net income for 0.5% of people. And then, not sure if we're going to get much here, but yeah, you get a
So it
little
costs
bit.
3.3 million relative to the Senate bill, not relative
Yes,
to the current law. Okay,
which
right,
we said would cost 90 or would raise $93.3. So if we just compared to current law, we would expect that this policy we created would raise like $90 million.
And then how do you, if I want to flip the baseline, I just do,
You just,
like I went into the fiscal impact to the state, so I just do that. Okay.
yeah, so I just flipped it. So now we should probably get, it'll
If you want to
raise.
compare it to baseline, though, I think, yeah, we swap it back and I actually forget if we have a baseline policy that's just baseline.
What is current law?
Yeah, yeah, number 2. I don't remember. I think number 1 is current law in the UK.
Nice.
But really, we should swap it probably. And we're working on a redesign of our database so that, because like a lot of these things we should be able to just hold on to. We don't need to recalculate. We already have baseline. We already have the other stuff. So this is going to be more close to instant once we get this right.
That might, hold on, let me refresh. Sometimes when you do 2 reforms at the same time, it gives you the wrong output.
I have to run, but thank you so much for doing this. This is
There we go.
really great, and I think I can figure out how to play around with it a little bit better now. So look forward to connecting with you guys again real soon.
Thanks, Pete.
Yep. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it. So yeah, so we can see that now it's going to raise 89.4 million, which seems about right.
Can you drop that link in the chat, David?
Sure.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions or suggestions on new things for us to score in New York?
Great cue. Is it possible to to do the thing that I'd asked over email, or is that like not something we can square right now with the two different phase outs?
That was the phase out, like for childless filers rather than those with
Basically
children.
keeping, yeah, relative to the original print and what is the bill number, S2238,
Mhm.
keeping that phase out threshold the same. Actually, let me go to my emails. David. Yeah, keeping the phase out thresholds in the original bill at 75,150, but then for parents getting this new under the, okay, so that would be, sorry, that would be for the school tax credit under that bill. 75,150 is the same. But then for the child tax credit, if we
Mhm.
push those phase out thresholds out to 87.5 and 175, and we move to a 2% phase out rate.
So for filers that have kids, their school tax credit would still phase out at 75,150, or that
Yeah,
would increase?
exactly.
Oh, then we can do that. We can
Oh,
keep,
okay.
we can keep
Okay.
the school tax credit phase out thresholds at 75,150 and increase the child tax
Right,
credit
because it's two different
thresholds.
credits. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think we should split the school tax. That seems really complicated to me, like splitting the school tax credit phase out threshold. Yeah, you just do 75,150, and then the new credit we're creating, that one has a little bit of a higher phase out threshold. I'm trying to just like push those break even points as far out as I can get, basically,
Gotcha.
while still not costing the state any money.
Yeah, I can do that, and I'll send you the impacts.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that was not okay. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
You think we can try it now? Or
Why not?
we have 4
Why
minutes. I think
not?
we can. it's a good
Okay,
schedule.
let's reset this and go back to Senate. Oh, no, that's not what I want. I don't want to name it. I want to, let's go back to what we actually have. Okay. So for the child tax rate, you want to do 2%?
Mm-hmm. So it's a little
Okay.
gentler. Because it seems
Okay.
like I'm always surprised at how quickly this credit under this bill just disappears and appears to be leaving like this set of middle income families in kind of a crunch. And I think it's because of this aggressive
Nope,
phase
that's not what I
out.
want.
So
Do that, and then 175. Okay, that should be good. Rate and then the school tax credit stays this. Do you want the school tax credit to phase out at 5% still?
no, I think what I'm saying is they should probably both like move everybody to the gentler phase out rate
Okay.
so that
Let
everybody
me-
gets the break even points.
I can just scroll and
pushed
find
out.
it. Oh, wait, if I click here and then, okay, we'll make the rate 2, and we'll make that rate 2, and the phase out threshold stay the same. So yeah, let's calculate.
Right, but then they're different for the child tax credit.
Mhm.
Okay.
So they're both phasing out at 2%, but the phase out thresholds are different.
For the child, right, exactly.
Yeah, for both of them. Yeah.
I'll tell the servers we're on the clock here.
Oh, okay. So Still raises,
Okay. That's
I think.
amazing.
Yeah.
And then you guys don't have, like, the break even points is a different thing, right? That's not within this same analysis. You would put that in a separate doc. Like, this
Yeah,
doesn't tell
yeah,
us.
the break-even
Yeah.
even points are different. But yeah, so you could either make the phase out gentler or like reduce it less than 2%, or you can increase the phase out thresholds for the child tax credit. Take it closer to budget neutral.
It's amazing.
You can calculate the
yes.
break-even points by describing a household. So going to enter my household page and sort of using the graphical varying your earnings, see where the crossover point is.
Mhm. That's essentially what I did with the doc that I sent you.
Okay, can you guys show me how we
Yeah,
would do that though?
so let's look at
I'm
single
sorry,
parent.
I have to run. I think my next meeting's on Zoom. So
That's okay.
Okay.
but David, I don't know, do you want to drop like a meet link to finish this up with Becky in the chat?
Yeah, Becky, if you have time to meet now, I can send
Sure,
you
yeah.
a Google Meet.
Okay.
Perfect.
Cool. Could you make that so I can close the?
Yeah. I'll send it to you right away, Becky.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.